acknowledge the article that you penned for the Washington Post, The Path to Louisiana's Footprint. That's a very thoughtful article, and I want to acknowledge. I'd expect nothing less from you, a Rhodes Scholar, though. Thank you. Senator Vitter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Sarbanes and all the members of this committee for this important hearing on the rebuilding needs in Katrina-impacted areas. I'm also honored to be joined by my colleagues, Senator Landrieu and Congressman Baker. I wanted to focus on two things. First, why I also strongly support the Baker bill and why it is a very important mechanism that can help us move forward in the rebuilding process. And second, and just importantly, really the subject of that op-ed which you just held up, which is why I think we're at a bit of a logjam and how we break through that logjam in a positive way and move forward using the mechanism of the Baker bill or something similar. First of all, let me reiterate very clearly that I am very supportive, along with Senator Landrieu, of Congressman Baker's bill, H.R. 4100. Of course, we have a Senate companion bill before you, S. 2172. And very broadly speaking, I'm supportive of it for two important reasons. First of all, it gives some recovery, financial recovery, and sense of hope to tens of thousands of people, many of whom lost everything they own in this earth, others of whom lost so much through absolutely no fault of their own. And it's really even worse than simply not being through any fault of their own. It's most of them lost this not because of a natural disaster, but because of a man-made disaster. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that the great majority of the catastrophic flooding in New Orleans occurred not from levees being overtopped by water coming over the levees, but by failures of those levees due to fundamental design flaws of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. That is beyond dispute at this point, and the Baker bill helps make those folks at least semi-whole. The second reason I'm supportive of the mechanism is that it puts a mechanism in place that can help jumpstart the redevelopment of entire devastated neighborhoods in which, quite frankly, redevelopment will be problematic at best if it just depends on individual decisions. No one individual homeowner, for instance, wants to go way out on a limb having no idea who's following him or not following him in a completely devastated area. There needs to be some more coordinated approach, and the Baker bill is a mechanism that offers that. Let me move on to the second topic I wanted to touch on, and again, it's really the heart of the op-ed which you mentioned, and it is why I think we're at a bit of an impasse over the Baker bill, but really more broadly over the rebuilding effort. And I believe it largely comes down to this. I think a lot of the hesitation has to do with what many folks in the administration and in Congress and around the country feel is the lack of a clear rebuilding plan. President Bush on January 27th stated, quote, "The plan for Louisiana hasn't come forward yet, and I urge the officials, both state and city, to work together so we can get a sense for how they're going to proceed," close quote. And February 2nd, in an op-ed piece, Donald Powell, who you'll hear from, wrote that the Baker bill, quote, "is not a long-term plan," close quote, that includes, quote, "key elements, among them decisions on where and where not to rebuild," close quote. Now, as you can probably guess, many in Louisiana took great offense at these comments. A lot of folks said the Baker bill is our plan, and we have numerous planning commissions at work on things like the footprint question, where and where not to rebuild. I think one thing all of us, including all of us in Louisiana, have to understand is that the Baker bill is a great mechanism to go forward, but that's not the same as a substantive plan making the substantive decisions about what's going to happen and where it's going to happen, where and where not to rebuild. And I think that's what so many folks in Washington and around the country are looking for. They don't want to see numerous planning commissions. They want to see a single substantive plan. They don't want to listen to a footprint discussion. They want to see a footprint, and one that doesn't include areas that are likely to suffer catastrophic flooding again. Now, I think there are other things that the President and folks up here have to understand too. They have to understand that this is not as simple as saying you can't build in a floodplain. The White House is built in a floodplain. It's not as simple to say you can't build below sea level. If you say that, the country will have to sacrifice a vitally important energy hub and port system. Most of all, they have to understand what I said a few minutes ago, that the great majority of New Orleans' catastrophic flooding occurred because of breaches in levees that were not overtopped by water, but rather that failed from below because of gross design mistakes of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So if you put all this together, what is the plan for moving forward and breaking through this impasse? I believe it demands action from both sides. First, the governor of Louisiana, the mayor of New Orleans, parish presidents, all of their commissions must produce one single, fully fleshed out, detailed, substantive plan. This can't just be another request for billions in federal assistance amidst vague discussion of the tough local issues, but a specific plan that addresses those issues head on, including the footprint question. In other words, a denser New Orleans with a smaller footprint, but also one that can accommodate everyone who wants to return and that can be defended against future hurricanes at significant but manageable expense. Now, this plan should also detail bold reforms such as replacing the failed Orleans Parish public school system with a diverse collection of charter schools and replacing the outdated charity hospital system with coverage that offers the needy solid preventative and other care through numerous providers. That's the Louisiana side. But what about the federal side? Well, for its part, the Bush administration and Congress must endorse this general path now to encourage bold, courageous Louisiana decisions. And this endorsement must mean that we will take the lead in funding a responsible plan once it is produced. The $6.2 billion in CDBG block grant funding approved in December is a real down payment, but additional federal dollars will be needed to buy out areas that can be converted to natural flood basins and to help rebuild others. This could be done through the Baker Bill or some modification of it, perhaps a state Baker Bill with federal funding. Up to now, the difficult footprint discussion has been framed almost entirely in terms of some people not being able to return to their neighborhoods. But the path I'm suggesting, using the Baker Bill or something similar as a mechanism, would offer these residents much greater financial recovery through buyouts that they could possibly enjoy otherwise, coupled with the ability to rebuild their lives in nearby parts of a safer, stronger community. As difficult a path as this is, I truly believe that the people will accept it in Louisiana and across the nation. The real question is, will the Louisiana and national politicians? And let me end on a very hopeful note. I believe we are seeing movement down this path on both sides. I am very hopeful that in the very near future we'll have some very positive news involving increased additional support for housing and other needs on the ground in Louisiana. And if we do that, and I'm hoping we will, I hope that will be coupled with the culmination of a lot of work going on in Louisiana to produce that single, unified, bold plan that can gain the confidence of folks here in Washington and around the country. I believe that is the combination that can allow us to move forward through the mechanism of the Baker Bill or something very similar. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Congressman.